What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Master Crafted. We are back with another video talking about the missions. And we hope you liked the first one, but we're here for the second. And what's the second one going to be, Phil? What are we talking about today?
Now going into the splits of different ones. So it's Take and Hold versus Disruption. Take and Hold is running Determined Acquisition, and Disruption is running Death Trap. I have a lot of experience with this mission. I've played Disruption quite a bit at the beginning of 11th edition. So what we're going to do, what the theme of all these videos is that aren't the mirror are going to be Lane's going to take one side and I'm going to take the other. And then if we bring on any special guests, maybe they jump in and help one of us out, because to see both sides of it, and because these missions play drastically differently, we kind of have to come at it from a separate lens in terms of how we're explaining what each one is trying to do, because you need to be cognizant, because this is for the Take and Hold and Disruption players, you need to be cognizant of what your opponent is trying to do.
Yeah, 100%. And this is one of the more interactive missions in terms of understanding positioning, I would say. And we're going to deep dive all of that. We're going to be talking about all the missions actions that you're going to be doing as a disruption player, and all of the spacings and timings on when to stand where as a take and hold player. So first up, take and hold players, you are playing Determined Acquisition. End of any battle round, end of your own turn, you will score 2 VP for every objective you control that you did not control at the start of your turn, not including your home. And then from the second battle round onwards, for each objective you control, you get 3 VP. And then if that objective happens to be in your opponent's territory, it is going to bump it up by 3 additional VP. So holding the center and holding their expansion is worth twice as much as your own natural. So that is a very interesting way to look at it, and we'll deep dive that in a bit. But first, let's flip it over to Disruption, and Phil's going to tell you all about that.
All right. Disruption is Death Trap. It's a very interesting mission because it's very unique to 11th edition. It's not something we saw a lot of in 10th. So the mission revolves around actions. Disruption has a lot of actions. It's kind of like our bread and butter. We have to be built to do it. So Death Trap is for each terrain area trap this turn, it's 2 VP. And then for each of these terrain areas that is an objective, you get an additional 3. The action is here on the back. If you want to see a deep dive of the dispositions, you can go over to our other video. We have a playlist of going over every single mission, but this is just a general catch us up to speed. The action has to be done on a terrain area that is not within your deployment zone. It does not say wholly within, it just says not within. And then you have not trapped it already, so you cannot stack the tokens. This is unlimited, and it completes immediately, which are both significant. It means that your opponent really can't stop you, even if they were to heroic into you. The action completes immediately, so you will still score. And then it's trapped. I have them now where I have tokens that are customized just for me, that I put onto terrain pieces. That way people know that there is an objective marker there or an operation marker there, and it is trapped. And then if we kill a unit that's on a terrain area that was trapped, we get 3 VP. That's a couple of hurdles to jump through. It's a little tough, so we got to be pretty aggressive with where we put the traps. That way we still have these point scoring in the later game, because you will see, as Lane and I discussed this mission, that there are only so many options that you'll be able to trap, and you need to be very cognizant of where and when you are doing it. And the final is, as long as you control your natural, it is worth 4. That is a good amount of points. I like that, and you need to be cognizant of it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a fairly balanced mission with a fair amount of T's and C's, especially for the disruption player. As Phil was saying, right, to get those extra kill points, it has to be a terrain area that is trapped. One of the nice things is that it doesn't have to be trapped when you actually kill it. I'm pretty sure that you can, in your shooting phase, start trapping it and then shoot something off of it, and still it started the turn in an area that is trapped, because that will complete immediately, if I'm not mistaken. Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, the action completes immediately, so you could go up, action it, it completes immediately, and then shoot that thing off, and then you will get the points for it.
Yeah, so that is nice. They didn't overlook some weird jankiness on, like, oh, well, you did it too late, so now it doesn't count. So that's very nice. When we are looking at these missions, before we dive into the maps, one of the things we always like to talk about is kind of where do we see ourselves with points on like a general, an average. Where can we definitively score every turn? right? So very low bar, hold one that isn't your own. We'll say in general, that's 10 points, if not 12, probably 12. Turn one, you can walk onto your natural. You can probably walk out and hold the center. And then another 4 turns of taking the center back. That's 12 VP. And then as we look at the bottom half of that scoring card, for each objective you control, if you can maintain holding your own natural and your home, that is 9 VP per turn. So that's 36 plus 12. We're already at 48, right? Like you don't have to go out of your way to score very, very minimally on this. It is pretty brutal. Phil, as somebody who's played into this a lot, have you found it very difficult to kind of slow down the take and hold players' scoring?
Absolutely. When I just look at it and they're like, oh, well, you just controlled the center because, you have a big brick of whatever there, and I wasn't able to get enough OC on it to deny you, or I didn't want to put enough OC because I know they're just going to get clapped because I'm running disruption and maybe I have a few more, you know, scoring units versus like heavy hammer units. It is difficult. You have to build your list in a way that has to be able to go into stuff like this. So it's really, really interesting. But it does feel like taking a whole player is just breathing and on the board, and they're scoring they're scoring 8 points no matter what for their primary. And yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it is tough for sure, but we are going to try to talk about how, especially as a death trap player who has to do a little bit more than breathe, how you can potentially, give yourself an upper hand and ways to look at this and these maps on maybe where to give yourself somewhat of an advantage and how to properly go through your turns, because it's going to be a lot about timing on when you should be trying to trap what ruins, how important each of them are on your priority list of terrain pieces to trap, so that we can be procking that kill something on a trapped terrain piece as early as possible.
yeah, absolutely. So right off layout A, this is I can't remember the name of it.
Sweeping.
Sweeping engagement. Thank you. So layout A, sweeping engagement. This is another Dawn of War-esque map, as in long deployment edges. Not necessarily what we love to see, but let's start from the disruption side. So everyone understands. From the disruption side, what we're looking to do is we need a good first turn. We have to be able to at least trap 2 objectives, meaning we need to go out and trap the center, which means we need to go out and trap the natural. There's some issues with that we need to be cognizant of. One, obviously, is the staging of our units. And sorry, just reading that over. So one is the staging of our units. We need to make sure we're in a good position. The staging areas are still as apparent as they were in 11th edition. We obviously want to be back behind here. I want to put a unit in a position where I'm either pre-measuring to this spot if they have enough mobility to get there and do an action, but realistically, they are behind this wall, and I'm looking to just come up and touch this with whatever I have that's the fastest I have, and I need to make sure I can get up there and do an action. Because for the disruption action for Death Trap, the only requirements are it's not been trapped already, it's not within your deployment zone, and it can only be on one terrain area. At no point does it say you have to control it. So you could go up there, you could trap something that your opponent does control currently, and you still complete the action, which is incredibly important because if it was I had to control it and also do the action, that this game plan gets really, really like it's taken hold favored, as in it's very hard to stop taking hold from scoring. You have to build your list in a certain way to actually do that. But if I had to control the objective and also action on it, that becomes very difficult. So realistically, I'm looking to at least trap these two. If I go first, I want to be positioned that I can actually go after all three. I want to be in a position that I could trap all three center, get my 15 points, and then like be okay with being a little bit slower in the late game because as we'll map that out, the disruption player, after you score those three, there are not many terrain areas left outside our deployment zone that we actually have reliable access to. There is this objective here. This is all one piece per the core 11th rules. And then we could go out here and we could trap this area. Then what's left is everything in our opponent's deployment zone. So obviously these three objectives, or these three terrain areas, one being an objective, are all ones that we can trap. That is not a reliable form of points. Our opponent knows exactly where we need to go to get those, which means they can very easily screen you out if they're playing with that in mind.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too, as we look at it from a take and hold player side, right? It's so easy for take and hold to score that bare minimum of primary that you're not concerned with like really just pushing your army out if you don't have to, right? We can protect our because giving up those points for you ever, doing them on those terrain pieces, especially if you do our home objective. If you get 5 points for doing that action on our home objective, that's just almost immediately balancing out the game, right? If you're able to get that done, if you can ever sneak something up there and stuff, that's a huge 5 points of primary for the disruption player. So we're just looking to really make sure we're not giving up extra things in terms of space, because we don't want them to have the ability to do those extra actions. We're trying to play a very good metered game plan. And just like how Phil doesn't have to really control the objective, we still do, but the timing is important. If you infiltrate, and I'm gonna make sure, take a minute. We want to clip this, Phil, because it's probably I don't know. We probably don't need to clip it, but y'all need to remember this shit. If you ever start a unit on a terrain piece that infiltrates or scouts, I'm gonna slap the shit out of you. Okay, you just I guess I honestly should look at that, because I don't know if control is determined, Phil. Now that we think about it, is control determined until after the first command phase? Can you actually do it? Because technically you can't sticky it because you don't control it for the ones that start at the start of your command phase. Before we give this advice to the people.
Start of the battle, no objective on the battlefield is controlled by either player. To gain control of an objective, the player will need one or more models with a characteristic of one or more. A model within range of a terrain objective while it's been end of each at the end of each phase and turn to determine the player's level of control over an objective. So at the end of the first command phase, you would have determined control,
So
which
not the
means
start.
correct. So
Okay.
you can infiltrate onto it and then score it. So we still need to stipulate that.
Right. We want to make sure we
Okay.
cover it. We just want to make sure we
Yeah.
get it right. The good
Yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah.
good thing we slowed down, because the comments would be heinous. Fucking people in our assholes. Okay, so I want to cover something for take and hold specifically to make sure people do know the timing. And that is that first part that says for an objective you did not control at the start of the turn, excluding your home, you get 2 VP. So you do not control anything at the start of the game, and it is not determined until the end of the phase. So that means if you do infiltrate, you can infiltrate onto objectives without ruining your 2 VP. So we want to make that important distinction. And it doesn't matter. In the take and hold video, I had talked a lot about trying to stand on the center to make it harder for your opponent to have the control more stipulation. So this doesn't have those same effects, but we can still go ahead and talk about infiltrating on not only objectives but terrain pieces, right? Because in this mission, it is the zoning that matters so much more, right? If we can put ourselves in positions to go ahead and block our opponent out from potentially, doing it on our own natural, if we can buy that space, we can either just line up on the front edge of our own objective and say, hey, it's a little exposed, but I at least know you can't get here, right? Or we can more aggressively take space if we get first drop and go behind that ruin in front of it down below. So that way that we are just automatically, we're behind it, we're hidden, they can't see us, but at least we know that we're taking up the space to prevent them from coming and doing our natural as easily, right? It's going to be very hard to deny them the center. If you have a big infiltrating unit, you could try to do that, but you just can't get close enough, right? That's the problem. Is if you can't, it's only you can be within 8, but there's still the whole front edge. You're not going to
Yeah,
be able to get close enough to deny them. But denying your own natural, I think against some armies is very worth it.
yeah. Yep, very much so. This would be disheartening if I lose first drop. My opponent is able to ensure that their natural stays untrapped, because then I have to get rid of this unit, which I don't get any points for because they aren't on a trained piece that is trapped. And then my tempo is slowed down. I have to go out here at a later time, which is good, which means that, as the take and hold player, you're looking to disrupt this again. So how do we disrupt this again? Well, it's having the next unit locked and loaded, ready to go here, and saying, okay, well, you killed the trash piece that was out here that was preventing you from going. Now this second unit is all coming out, and they're all going to push and pressure beyond that objective to make sure you can't trap it again. Because you have no other way. Traps don't go away. They don't get destroyed, anything. Once they're down for good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as in terms of infiltrating, it's kind of that game of can they do my natural or can I prevent them? I think as that's kind of the main question. It's such a low bar for them to get to the center, to get to their own natural, to get to that little piece that's in front of their home. And for disruption, Phil, that's probably the one you're the least concerned with ever doing is the one in front of your home, right? As we talk about priority, the center in general, we're looking to kind of force that fight and hope that they step some stuff out there. If you paid attention, though, as a take and hold player, it's an insanely low bar. I don't even have to really do that to score my points. I don't have to hold the center in my command phase. I have to shoot you off or fight you off if I can, but I don't even want to do that half the time because then I'm just giving you kills and I don't want to give you kills. If your disruption opponent happens to be on the edge or somewhere that you can go fight them off if you're a melee army, that's good. That's a lot. I think that's probably the biggest difference I noticed looking at this mission is if your opponent is shooting, it is much harder. If they are melee, it's a lot easier. If you want them to deal with your material as a disruption player and they're a melee army, stand on trapped terrain. You will then score your points the next turn. Make them fight you on places you can score points from. Don't leave your shit hanging out in the middle of the board for no reason, especially against melee players.
Yeah, there are some significant things here, right? That is a very good point, right? The take and hold player eventually wants to get on objectives, but as Lane and we have mapped out, they don't have to. They could very easily just control their natural, zone beyond their natural, get their 6, potentially 8 points that they're going to get every round, and then say, okay, well, I don't really need to push any further than this. And if this central unit, which is like the most devastating part of this, if the unit that's here has a reactive move, has access to hidden, and then they can just hop off the objective. Yes, they did start the turn on the objective, so you still will get the points for killing them, but it makes it much harder to engage with them. It makes it much harder for you to actually go back and kill them if they're able to do any kind of reactive shenanigans. So if they can just walk on the objective, take it from you because they shot you off it, and then they only committed like a combi weapon lieutenant, and his one OC walks up there and he gets the job done. Like, and then he reactives away because he's got low nap, because he's got a reactive, because he has stealth, like all of these things. It becomes very difficult to actually engage with that army because the real assets are still sitting behind this L. They're waiting for you to come out and commit with something real. Like they're gonna just sit right here. Why would they come out any further? There is no justification for them to do so. They're gonna sit right here. Why would they commit any further? They're
Yeah.
waiting till turn 4, turn 5 to punish your scoring on your natural and say, well, you're just not going to score your natural. And
Yeah.
that's our main points gainer for the disruption player. So we really, as the take and hold player, are looking to just make sure, hey, how can I protect my natural from disruption? How can I be in a position to consistently secure a new objective every round, which on this layout is fantastic because really you're just going right here with whatever real asset you have, and you're going to come out here and you're going to touch this or you're going to charge, and you have decent shooting lanes onto the central objective, and you're going to be able to flip it. And it's going to be pretty devastating for the disruption player.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of it's a lot more thinking for the disruption player. You have to be very aware positionally. How we're still trying to do that, though, we talk about this all the time, right? We're looking for very good rapid ingress threats, right? We're looking to say, the bar might not be on you as the taken hold player to really come out and deal with me a ton, but at the same time, if you don't take up space and you aren't being aggressive with some of your pieces, right? We're looking for these disruption lists to have, just very, very good threats that hopefully have deep strike that we can rapid ingress. And then we can just say, well, if you don't step forward, you're going to end up jailed. And, maybe I will take your home, right? Like if you're not careful, if you aren't going to come take the space to deny my natural, because, as disruption, you still get 4 VP for holding one objective, right? We're still trying to make sure we do that. If the taken hold player has just said, you know what, screw it, I'm not going to come try to deny you, I'm not going to put an EOC on there, right? I'm not going to commit resources to actually fighting you off of it. Okay, they didn't give you a kill target, but they also just gave you your own hold. And if they aren't taking up that space, if they aren't actually trading and doing stuff like that, make sure that, as we look at your natural as the red player, go and push something up, do some pre-measuring, say, where can you actually get to that could shoot around this ruin, right? If I can hide my unit properly, can I be in a place that threatens your home next turn, right? That I can hide, and unless you either really come out to the side and expose yourself to a lot of shooting, or you actually come and touch the terrain piece, which again, right, we're going to hopefully have trapped, so that way we can score some points off of killing them if they come touch it, right? That's going to be the big things, is trying to see where we can actively push them. And then just also, can you deny, right? That's going to be the only other option, is can you just consistently put pressure on their natural, right? Maybe you decide that's more your army's forte, is, what, there's great staging on that home ruin, there's great staging going towards their natural, and I'm just going to commit to it. Maybe they didn't, it's a wide board. Some of these, especially the shooting armies, or the melee armies, can't get across the board fast enough to really deal with you if you can just pressure and push across and actually deny their natural, right? Knock them back to only, 5 VP per turn, right? That's going to be a lot more of a consistent way to try for it if you can.
Yeah, there's some huge benefits there. So, as Lane said, we are looking to push up, right? Because if we measure distances, that's 17 inches to get to this front edge. If I have a jump pack unit or something with fly, they move 12 inches, even with take to the skies, going down to 10, right? Like with advance and charge, I have reasonable threat range going into our opponent's home. I could very easily deny our opponent's home. Uh, because one thing that is beneficial here is they don't get points for controlling a new objective because it doesn't count your home. So me flipping your home actually is significantly impactful for your game plan. And it's something that, a lot of the lists that I've been running on disruption are looking to do. I want to stop you from holding your home because that's 3 points. If I can stop you from getting 3 points, especially when we talked about how easy it was for the take and hold player to score, that is incredibly, incredibly important. I need to find a way to go do those things. And there is armies that, people run, myself included, that is a threat range I'm very easy, very capable of getting across and going into. And if I can get onto your home and cause you not to control it, great, fantastic. That means I'm in a better position because you have to turn around assets to go deal with it. Yeah, this layout is very interesting. This layout is very similar to what we've seen so far. The staging area is something we just talked about in the take and hold mirror. This objective obviously is very open, and there's a lot of space here for good rapid ingresses. But, as we said in the beginning, those infiltrates are incredibly important. These pockets are still incredibly important. We need to put stuff in there as the disruption player, and then the take and hold player, we're looking to prevent that early trap on our natural. Yeah, Lane said it already. I won't repeat it. This is the most important for how to start the game.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think disruption players, right, make sure you're going to get your traps done. And then the rest of the game, deny, 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 taking up space, right? How do we lower their scoring? That's the actual game plan you are trying to play. Don't push them too far back, though. You want to be fighting over their own natural. You want them to try to take it back because even if it gives up 2 points, you're getting 3 as long as you can kill whatever's stuck on there. So it is a points gain for you. And then, yeah, I think that's a very good general analysis. I think let's keep moving on to the next one. If we have, we can always talk more in depth on the next one. A Crucible of Battle Map. Damn. Same five train areas that you can do, and it's the same nice little pocketed, kind of corner. It's the same thing, right? It's where we're both looking to scout to or infiltrate around, right? Trying to make it harder or easier to go touch that opponent's natural. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Phil, on this map?
Yeah, I mean the disruption player, you're looking for the same thing. The things that stand out to me on this map is the width that we can go here. It's not as accessible in terms of protecting our own natural. So it's actually a lot harder for us if we were to start like we're starting assets reasonably, right, against a balanced opponent, right? If we're starting here, it is actually very hard to get all the way over here, all the way over here to try to like punish whatever's in this pocket. It is not an easy thing to do. And if our opponent has any real shooting assets, that is very, very difficult. So from the take and hold player side, it is very hard to push into this with a shooting asset. We need probably some kind of combat asset to go up here or a good rapid ingress, maybe a 6-inch deep strike that can go and dig whatever's in this pocket out of there. Because if they can just keep flooding this natural objective, it becomes difficult, and it's not as easy as we saw in layout A to actually get into that objective. So it is difficult, right, to push that out. On the same thing on this side, these wide angle firing lanes to go after our opponent's natural though are much better, right? Like your opponent or the whoever is playing on which side, I could very easily just poke out this side and cut a pretty large line of sight view into everything that's in that objective. So if we look here, like it is reasonable for us to say like, hey, I can see a lot of things here. I could push out. I could very easily push up beyond and start seeing things that are on this objective that you maybe don't want me to see. And it's a lot easier. This angle here is very, very safe for us to get up the board because we have this great L here that blocks a lot of the line of sight, and then we can push up well beyond this to see into our opponent's natural objective, which is not what somebody who wants to control this objective wants to actually see.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things too. Even coming off the side of the board and stuff, if that take and hold player is not actively screening out and zoning, you can just drive on to the edge of the board and just blast that natural objective pretty easily. Other things, we've already kind of covered. It's going to be the same spots for scout for infiltrate, and then as we look at potentially kind of where are you playing around that center objective. Jesus, got windy. It's how are we actively going to play this mission in ways that affect our opponent, and can kind of get them to commit. This is something we didn't really talk about on the first map that I think would be worth talking about here, and we talked about it in the core list building, and that is having units that can take a beating, very resilient units. And as a take and hold player, I really like having those. I'm going to go park 6 Bulgrin on that middle objective, because if you don't come and kill them, especially I have access to ones where I can give them extra OC. Maybe you're playing against Wrath of the Rock and they have an ancient, right? There's ways to have very, very tough units that can go have 12-inch hidden with gone to ground, that you can be putting a lot of OC on that middle point and trying to kind of force your opponent, who's a disruption player, to maybe commit a lot more to the center than they're planning on, right? If you can kind of work your opponent in terms of, especially on this board, I think more than the sweeping engagement, I think this is true for both players, but I think especially take and hold, by being able to play a flexible game plan and try to draw your opponent one way and then go the other to potentially score on the other side, or just have their resources end up out of the game. I think that's a very, very useful thing to do. And again, it's always going to come back to having good rapid ingresses and deep strikes on these 11th edition maps is just so important.
Blaine said, like there is a world where you want things on this other side of the wall. It's very common for either player, taking hold or disruption, right? Because this terrain piece is so large, it is very hard to screen out this whole thing to prevent your opponent from just touching it and doing the death trap action. It's a lot better in some situations to just have your unit back against this wall, hidden behind it. Yes, you're touching it. That's fine. Because you do get access to hidden, you do get access to go to ground. You're forcing your opponent to come pretty far, and then you create, depending on this unit, a 6-inch bubble of, hey, if you come out here, I will heroic you, or I have another, maybe less valuable unit that's closer on the objective, and I space them out to the point where I leave space for you to actually pass through coherency of my unit. So when you make your charge, you have to go to the other side, and now you've made my heroic even shorter, right? So whether you take the Leon aggression version of heroic or the 12-inch heroic, both of those things are valuable. And from the take and hold player side, this is obviously optimal, right? Like if we can heroic and pick up a unit and still control this objective at the start of the turn, critically important.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about it. I think it was actually the pre-show. I don't think we talked about it on the first map. If you flip the board, that's a very useful thing, right? I think it's going to be a lot easier for things that are more infantry based and things like that are more melee focused as well, short range armies. But if you can flip the board and be holding, we'll shift our triangle of power from our normal natural expansion, the center, and our home to their natural expansion, the center, and our home, and we can be holding that, right? If we're playing more of that style of game and we have the resources to really just play an aggressive play style and really go take that space, your bar just got higher by, we'll say you don't even get it accomplished until turn 3. That's just turn 4 and turn 5. That's 3 extra points because that objective you're now holding that should have been your natural is worth 6 instead of 3 because it's outside of your territory, right? So we're just raising that bar of minimum scoring if we have the capability to turn the board, right? If we have a faster army, especially that can cross those no man's land gaps and maintain our hidden, you're going to have a lot easier time doing that. But if you can and your army is built for it, that makes it an even larger mountain to climb for the disruption player.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I I think this map is very interesting. It does have an interesting balance of good shooting lanes, getting aggressive into our opponent's natural. But I think if I was a take and hold player, I would be looking to try to flip this board. As long as I have a decent asset that I can go out here and push beyond and start threatening my opponent's home, there's a world where I do that. Just because it does provide 6 points if you're able to get on your opponent's home, it is quite valuable. And as the disruption player, some people I think get a little too focused on, hey, I'm disruption. I need to run a bunch of activations, and I need an overwhelmingly amount of units, and I don't need to be lethal. This is where you'll trip up, right? Because a take and hold player, a lot of this take and hold style lists are going to be incredibly dense. They're going to have Terminators, they're going to have Fulgrim, they're going to have big bricks of Necron warriors or wraiths, and you have to be able to shift them. You still have to be able to kill them to get the 3 points for killing a unit on a trapped objective. So you need lethality, and that is the general theme of disruption. So there are a lot of disruption lists that I've played and practiced with that, like this, I think highlights one of the biggest things with disruption is you still have to be lethal. You almost have to be more lethal than a lot of other lists because you have a variety of things that you're trying to do because of what your dispositions into each matchup is asking you to do. Take and hold is asking you to do the same thing, right? The list and the framework and the play plan is very similar. It's hold objectives. It is not the same for disruption.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that is definitively worth bringing up as you play into purge players. We'll get into that specifically, but right, it's going to be a different kind of stat check. That's going to be armies that are very elite but still do a lot of damage. Whereas take and hold, Phil gave great examples: Terminators, Bulgrin, Necron warriors, wraiths, blobs, things that are just going to be much more. I have to chew through it, and it's a son of a bitch to remove, right? As a disruption player, you have to be able to handle it because you're playing one of the most varied games of any mission in 40k right now.
Absolutely. Okay. On to layout C.
I mean, it's like same, but different. I mean, it's we're just barely rotating where those little L's are and
Yeah.
shifting our deployment zones. It's what else is there to say, Phil? We people at this point, if they should already know their scouts, their infiltrates, they know where they're staging. What is any different about this map?
So for me, the deployment zones are much larger, meaning it is very hard to screen out your backfield compared to what we've just seen in the past two. Like this is one of, if not the hardest. The the first one, force sweeping engagement, is difficult, but it is tiered. There is ways around it. This space is pretty much wasted space back here for the player whose deployment zone it is. There's nothing effective that I'm putting back here, realistically, because the majority of the time I'm going to be in a position where I have to get up the board. As a take and hold player, I'm looking to be on this side of the objective, and I need to get up the board. So this is a lot of wasted space. What that tells me is whether it be disruption or take and hold, you can really take advantage of deep strikes. You can really take advantage of rapid ingress. There's not safe spaces to do it. So if your opponent has a shooting asset back here and they can cover all this space and say, okay, you want a rapid ingress, that's fine. But I have a great shooting asset back here that's just going to pick up whatever it is that you put back here. So that would be the way I would potentially defend it without putting too many assets back here. I would, maybe it's, your DDA or it's your Rep-X or it's your Defiler that's already like kind of patrolling this side of the board. You just need to be cognizant of all of this space. And we obviously don't want our opponent to be able to rapid ingress here and get onto our natural. Right? If we allow our opponent to go here with a rapid ingress, be incredibly safe from, let's say, our shooting asset that we were just talking about, and then get onto our home expansion with whether it be the disruption player going forward and doing that so they can do their trap action, or potentially if it's the take and hold player, doing that to try to hold an additional objective outside their deployment zone, or sorry, outside their territory. So with the amount of space that's back here, the one place we don't want our opponent to get to is right in this pocket, right behind this L. Because if they're able to rapid ingress behind this piece of terrain, and that patrolling unit that we just talked about of the Defiler or the Rep-X cannot get to them, that means our opponent can very easily come onto this objective. They can trap it if they're the disruption player, or potentially put themselves in a situation where they're threatening a 6, and then also getting a 2 because they're going to control a new objective and take away your home. You cannot allow this to happen from both sides, right? As the take and hold player, I don't want my opponent to get onto my natural or onto my home expansion and trap it. That's an additional 5 points that I'm not willing to give up. And as the disruption player, we have to play the front of the board. We have to be the aggressor in a lot of these situations because of how easy it is for opponents to score points. We need to kill things. We need to do those things. So, it's beneficial on both sides, and that's why this layout, that amount of space is incredibly, incredibly concerning for me because screening is harder with you have to be outside of 8 inches now versus 9, and then the coherency bubble of having to be within 9 inches of each other. That has made a huge difference in my games. I have noticed, initially I was making mistakes where I'm like, well, I can't actually screen anything out. My opponent's able to rapid ingress away, and maybe they're even able to rapid ingress and touch one of these terrain pieces, which means they get hidden, which means that like I can't shoot them. So like all of those things are super, super substantial. The other thing that I think is really different about this is how we can deploy here in terms of infantry units and even some larger units. So you'll see this trick very often from a lot of players. They'll run a unit even on the exposed side of the terrain piece, but all touching this, which means they have the hidden keyword. They don't get obscuring, sorry, they don't get go to ground, but they do get hidden, which means it's very easy for all four of these to get up here and get onto their natural from a very good position because the drastic difference is that's 5 inches, let's say. And that means I can go up there, do an action if I need to, if it's cleanse or if it's a secondary. But if we're all the way back here, I actually cannot get to my natural and still be able to do an action with the majority of units based on their base movement. So right off the bat for both players, I would just look at doing this. Right?
Yeah.
Look at having a unit, all of them touching the terrain piece. You could even do it on this side. There are some units that are small enough that if I run them along this side, as long as they're inside my deployment zone, they're all touching the wall. and I measured you out, and I've said, okay, you don't have anything that can get within 15 inches. That means this unit is incredibly safe to come up here, whether it be the take and hold player or someone else, and touch this stupid little nub and get up there and just touch it just a little bit, meaning that you could, as a disruption player, get after it with a unit that doesn't scout, which is nice because then you can use that for other things without having to infiltrate a unit there, which is also nice, which means I'm not giving up one of those assets. And then maybe this is a very cheap unit that has sticky or something else that I can just go up here and do what I need to do on the center objective. Depends on secondary draws and you know opponent unit placement.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think this one is pretty interesting. The staging for both sides is very good. Trying to deny, trying to just aggress. Even those turned ruins are pretty good. Even like if you're able to kind of measure out and see where your opponent is able to go, like I wouldn't be opposed to parking something large right behind the center ruin and just being like, well, I know you can't come tag it and shoot through. I am going to stage a large shooting asset right behind that center objective, and it is going to threaten a lot.
Yeah, it's these long shooting lines are very obvious. This pocket here is great for whatever shooting asset you have to poke out and punish your opponent's natural. And then you obviously have great shooting spaces to punish things that come out to your natural. So all of those things are really nice. This does feel like a very interesting board. But these huge center ruins for that middle objective is the trend of what we've seen for take and hold so far. That's a lot of space for them. They have opportunities to put a lot of OC on these objectives, which is beneficial. And as a disruption player, there is a benefit there. It's very hard for them to stop you from doing the trap action. So if your opponent is trying to stop you on the middle early and you're as a disruption player, you're like, well, I can't get to it. Well, I would say that's a problem with positioning or the problem with the units that you're taking. So you need to reevaluate it because pretty much guaranteed you should be able to trap two objectives in no man's land minimum. If you go first, the goal should be I should be able to trap all three because if I can trap my opponent's natural early, that means every time I pressure it from then on, I'm getting points off the kills by going out to that objective, which is like huge.
Yeah, that is probably priority number one is trying to, if you can, do their natural. You need to still, as we talked about, have a list that can be aggressive, that can go across the board quickly, that can give a large amount of damage to multiple units to really threaten that take and hold players OC, especially on those points. Because if you can't do that, that's going to make your game a lot harder.
Lane, we've gone through all three. Any final thoughts on this mission or the take and hold versus disruption?
I think again, it's going to come down to spacing. We talked some about it on the first one, but trying to win possible when you know you're not in the threat range of any major like damage assets, trying to position yourself like even if it's just like, hey, I know they really need the extra 2 points for trapping the little L, right? The small two ruins. If I can put my unit in such a way that they can't get on it because they would be within engagement range, if I can go stage in that sense because they are acting like they want to have something, run up and do it, right? Like that's another little thing we can be trying to track. Don't fall into the trap of just doing it to do it, because if you don't pre-measure and they can go see it, they'll just go, oh cool, free unit, I'll kill it. Sure, they weren't allowed to trap it, but it's still a resource game, right? Maybe end of the game, if you've got some extra units, trying to prevent them from doing stuff by just screening, by just going up, even if you have to move up and move block things, right, to prevent them from running forward to go do actions on these objectives. That's always very important. Hope that you're not a Votan player playing take and hold. Don't hope if you're in your second half, you're going to have to be standing on those terrain pieces to get your +1 to hit. That's brutal. So just
Yeah.
don't play Votan if you're going to play take and hold into disruption. But like that's the thing for teams, right? Of like, oh, we need to track that, right? Armies that want to be fighting over objectives and stuff can make a much larger difference in this game and in this format. right? If you are a Votann player, you want to play on this map because it's still easy as shit to touch your home to get that buff and see a ton of the board at the same time, right? Be very conscious of where you can and cannot stand to give up those points, right? The disruption player, as Phil was saying, they're going to have some damage to deal with you. But if it's still 2 or 3 big units to deal with one of your 3 bricks of Bulgrin, right, and you can kill them back, guess what? They might not kill the second or the third one. So, those trades can be worth it. No, I think that's it. I am super excited that we are doing this series. Before we close it out, Phil, any final thoughts on your end?
Yeah, so from the disruption player's end, that's what I'm giving you now, because Lane obviously gushing over taking hold. You need to score 12 points minimum turn one. Like baseline, the play line needs to be whoever you're playing into, it's got to be 12 points. Whether you go first or second, doesn't matter. From then on, the plan needs to be I need to force my opponent in a way to put something on an objective. So the units that you need to put out there have to be to draw your opponent onto the objective physically, which means you're relying on hidden, which means you're relying on loan out, which means you're relying on reactives, which means like all those things are so incredibly important. Whether it be like a durable asset into shooting, you're forcing them to come into melee, as we said in the beginning of the video. Like, I want you to physically put an asset on here because the name of the game is I have to get you to come out early so that way I'm getting those 3 points. Because if you look on there, those points do not stack for kills. I only get 1 3-point tick for killing 1 unit on a trapped objective. We do not get 1 for every unit we kill on trapped objectives. So like realistically, I'm getting 7 to the initial 12, hopefully minimum. Because
Yeah.
the goal should be I should be getting a 4 for controlling my natural and a 3 for killing the objective. The problem is if we put ourselves in a position where our opponent doesn't feel the desire to come out onto the physical objectives, then we are going to fall behind because they are inherently scoring more than us base by not even trying. They'll
Yeah.
score their 6 and then their 2 for controlling a new objective. And if they can do that without actually interacting with you, that is really, really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. As a take and hold player, again, right, to go kind of the counterpoint, don't don't just do, let's say maybe you got cleanse and you got area denial and you've got these other things, right? Be conscious of, is this going to cost me more points to go do, right? Am I giving up more points than I'm gaining, right? If let's say it's those two, it's center ground, area denial, same thing, and cleanse, okay, that's worth it. I can go give up, 1 unit to go stand within 3 of the center and do the cleanse. They're going to get 3 points off the kill, but I'm getting 10 secondary points because I completed, both for max, right? Don't just be trickling out there, right? Just because you can maybe go get a center ground turn one, it might be worth it to save it, right? Because it's going to be such a low bar for them to trap it and kill you, right? Be cautious conscious of not just giving away free points because of secondaries. Secondaries and forcing you to come out is honestly one of Disruption's biggest friends in this matchup, is hoping that you draw cards that make you come interact,
Yeah.
because that's one of the things they need you to do. They want you to draw secure. They want you to get those things because they need you to come stand on those objectives.
Yep, for sure. It is a balancing game. Don't forget, 15 is the cap that you can score in every round for primary and for secondaries. So, like, don't be afraid to hold on to them if it means, as the take and hold player, having the tempo. As the disruption player, like, we need points
Yeah.
desperately. And if our opponent's going to be passive and try to play that game, that means we should be looking towards, like, on the display of my turn. I'm going to say, no, I'm going to hold it. And I'm going to say, I'm going to put these units out here and I'm going to force you to come out to stop me, or else you're going to give me 5. All of those things definitely matter. My beacon unit, I'm going to hold it. I'm going to put it in a pretty aggressive position. That way I can get the 5 and I'm going to force you to come out to deal with it. And if you kill it, fine, but I'm going to force you to do it with a real asset or multiple real assets. And, I'm going to try to gain an advantage off those things. So the disruption player, absolutely. We're relying on those secondaries and being very aggressive with, hey, you do this or I score.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways, honestly, is trying to leverage the secondary deck to your advantage and knowing the right timing of when to do things for both players. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for the second installment of the Turn Zero Tactics 11th edition series. We're going to keep trying to churn these out for y'all so that you can, I think last on the list is what, like recon versus recon. I'm sorry, we'll get to you eventually. It's just going to be a minute. I don't even know, but we will get through these in a timely manner. Hopefully, a couple of weeks, and we hope you all enjoy them. Thank you for tuning in. Go check out the Discord. Talk to us in there. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last but not least, do not forget that victory isn't given; it is forged, and it's forged right here at Mastercrafted. We'll see you all next time.
See you guys.